The smell of roasted turkey filled my mother's kitchen that Thanksgiving morning. I had been the one keeping this house standing for 6 years ever since my father passed away from a sudden heart attack. I paid every bill, every mortgage payment, every expense my family needed. Yet standing there in that familiar space, I never imagined I would be publicly humiliated in front of 40 people in the very home I was funding. That Thanksgiving dinner became the last time I ever stepped foot in that house. Before I begin this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If you have ever felt unappreciated by the people closest to you, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Now let me take you back to that day so you can understand how one family dinner changed everything forever. My name is Cale, and at 32 years old I thought I had everything figured out. I worked as a software engineer at a tech company in Seattle, earning around $120,000 a year. Not rich by any means, but comfortable enough to live a decent life in my small rented apartment. I kept things simple. No fancy cars, no expensive vacations, no flashy lifestyle. Most people looking at my life from the outside would think I was just an ordinary guy getting by. But what they did not know was where most of my money actually went. 6 years ago, my father Richard collapsed in the garage while working on his old pickup truck. A massive heart attack took him before the ambulance even arrived. He was 58 years old, the same age my mother Linda is now. His death shattered our family in ways I am still processing to this day. My mother had been a homemaker her entire adult life. She never held a job, never had her own income, never learned how to manage finances. My father handled everything. When he died, she was left with a house that still had 15 years of mortgage payments remaining and absolutely no way to pay for it. My younger sister Heather was 22 at the time, in her second year of college. She had dreams of becoming a marketing executive, and her tuition was not cheap. Our father had been paying for it, and suddenly that money was gone too. I remember sitting in the living room 3 days after the funeral, watching my mother sob into her hands. She kept saying she did not know what to do, that she was going to lose the house, that Heather would have to drop out of school. I was 26 years old, just 2 years into my career, and I made a decision that would define the next 6 years of my life. I told her not to worry. I told her I would take care of everything. And I did. Every single month I sent $2,300 for the mortgage payment. I covered Heather's remaining 3 years of college tuition, which added up to about $40,000 total. On top of that, I sent my mother $500 each month for her personal expenses, groceries, utilities, whatever she needed. Over 6 years, I calculated that I had given my family more than $200,000. That was money I could have used to buy my own home, to invest in my future, to build something for myself. But I never complained. Not once. I believed that was what family did. I believed that was my responsibility as the only son, the man of the house, now that my father was gone. Looking back, I realize I was waiting for something that would never come. A thank you. A recognition of my sacrifice. Some small acknowledgement that what I was doing mattered. Instead, what I got was silence. Or worse. My mother rarely expressed gratitude. When I visited, she would comment on how I still was not married, how the neighbor's son already had 2 kids, how I was wasting my life sitting in front of a computer. She never once said thank you for the roof over her head. She never acknowledged that without me, she would have lost everything. Heather graduated and got a decent job in marketing. She was making around $60,000 a year, enough to contribute something to the family expenses. But she never offered. Not a single dollar. And my mother never asked her to. I told myself it was fine. I told myself that family should not keep score. I told myself that eventually things would balance out. But deep down, a small voice kept asking why I was the only one sacrificing. When my mother called to tell me she was hosting a big Thanksgiving dinner this year, I actually felt excited. She said she was inviting around 40 people, aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, old family friends. It would be the largest gathering we had since my father's funeral. I thought maybe this was her way of bringing the family together, of celebrating how far we had come. I requested time off from work and drove 3 hours from Seattle to Spokane, where my mother still lived in the house I had been paying for. I stopped at a wine shop and bought her favorite bottle, a nice Pinot Noir. I also picked up a designer handbag for Heather, thinking she would appreciate the gesture. As I pulled into the driveway that Wednesday evening before Thanksgiving, I genuinely believed the next 2 days would be special. I had no idea I was walking into the worst moment of my life. I arrived at my mother's house around 9 in the morning on Thanksgiving Day. The front yard was already decorated with autumn wreaths and pumpkins. Inside, the smell of turkey and stuffing filled every room. It should have felt like home. My mother greeted me at the door, but there was no hug, no warm welcome. She immediately handed me a list of tasks. Move the tables from the garage. Set up 40 chairs in the living room and dining room. Bring up the extra dishes from the basement. Clean the back patio in case people wanted to step outside. I spent the next 2 hours doing manual labor while my mother barked orders from the kitchen. The table was not straight enough. The chairs were arranged wrong. I was moving too slowly and guests would be arriving soon. Every time I finished one task, she found something else to criticize. I kept my mouth shut. I told myself she was just stressed about hosting such a large event. I told myself it would get better once the guests arrived and she could relax. Around 11 in the morning, the front door opened and Heather walked in. She was not alone. Beside her stood a man I had never seen before, tall with slicked back hair and a smug grin that immediately rubbed me the wrong way. My mother transformed instantly. She rushed over, arms wide open, pulling Heather into a tight embrace. Then she turned to the stranger and hugged him too, like he was a long-lost son. His name was Travis. 30 years old, worked as a car salesman at a dealership downtown. Heather had been dating him for 6 months apparently, though this was the first I was hearing about it. My mother spent the next 20 minutes introducing Travis to everyone who walked through the door. She talked about how successful he was, how charming, how he and Heather were perfect for each other. She mentioned their plans for the future, hinting heavily at engagement and grandchildren. I stood 5 feet away, still holding a stack of folding chairs. She did not introduce me to anyone. When one of my aunts arrived and asked who I was, my mother gave a dismissive wave and said, "Oh, that is just Cale, my son." Then she returned to showering attention on Travis. Travis noticed me watching. He looked me up and down, taking in my dusty clothes and the manual labor I had been doing all morning. He smirked and turned away, whispering something to Heather that made her giggle. I felt something twist in my stomach, but I pushed it down. Around 1 in the afternoon, I went to the back hallway to grab more chairs from the storage closet. That is when I heard voices coming from the kitchen, my mother and Heather speaking in hushed tones, but not hushed enough. I froze. Heather was talking about buying a house with Travis. They needed a down payment around $50,000, and they did not have enough saved. My mother's response made my blood run cold. "Let me talk to Cale," she said. "He has to take responsibility for his sister. That is what family does." Heather agreed enthusiastically. "He has money," she said. "He lives alone in that apartment. What does he even spend it on? He is so selfish sometimes." My mother laughed softly. "You are right. He only thinks about himself. But do not worry, I will make sure he helps." I stood there in the hallway, completely frozen. 6 years, $200,000, countless sacrifices. And they called me selfish. They called me selfish for not giving even more. I wanted to walk into that kitchen and confront them right there. I wanted to scream that I had given everything I had. But something held me back. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the pathetic hope that I had misunderstood. So I said nothing. I grabbed the chairs and returned to setting up my hands, trembling slightly as I worked. By 4 in the afternoon, all 40 guests had arrived. The house was packed with relatives I only saw once a year, and neighbors I barely recognized. Everyone was laughing, catching up, complimenting my mother on the beautiful decorations and delicious smells coming from the kitchen. I moved through the crowd like a ghost. A few relatives acknowledged me with a nod or a quick hello. But most of the attention was on Travis, the exciting new addition to the family, the man who might give Linda grandchildren someday. My Aunt Ruth, my mother's older sister, found me standing alone by the window. She asked about my job, my life in Seattle. She said she was proud of me for doing so well. Before I could respond, my mother appeared and cut her off. Doing well, she laughed. He just sits at a computer all day. It is not like he does anything important. Ruth looked uncomfortable, but she did not argue. Travis wandered over, drink in hand. I prefer working with real people, he said with a condescending smile. Sales is about connection, about reading others. Not everyone can do it. My mother nodded approvingly. Travis is so good with people, she said. Heather is lucky to have him. I excused myself and went to the bathroom. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, trying to understand how I had ended up here. 32 years old, exhausted, unappreciated, and invisible in a house I was paying for. I told myself to just get through dinner. Just a few more hours and I could go home. I had no idea what was coming. At 5:30 in the evening, everyone gathered around the long table that stretched from the dining room into the living room. 40 people squeezed together on folding chairs and borrowed seats, ready to share in Thanksgiving dinner. The turkey was golden brown and perfectly cooked. Bowls of mashed potatoes, stuffing green beans, and cranberry sauce covered every available surface. It looked like something from a magazine. I found a seat near the end of the table, away from my mother and Heather, who were positioned at the head with Travis between them like a trophy. For the first half hour, everything was almost normal. People ate, talked, laughed. My Aunt Ruth asked me more about my work, and I explained some of the projects I had been leading at my company. She seemed genuinely impressed. Then my mother stood up and tapped her glass with a spoon. "Everyone, can I have your attention, please?" she announced, her voice carrying across both rooms. The conversations died down. 40 pairs of eyes turned toward her. "First, I want to thank all of you for being here today," my mother began, smiling warmly. "It means so much to have family and friends together under this roof." She went on to talk about gratitude and blessings, the usual Thanksgiving sentiments. Then her tone shifted. "I especially want to recognize my daughter Heather," she said, gesturing toward my sister. "She has grown into such an accomplished young woman, and now she has found Travis a wonderful man who I know will take great care of her. I could not be prouder." Heather beamed. Travis put his arm around her shoulders possessively. Several relatives offered congratulations and well wishes. Then my mother turned toward me. Her smile faded. Her eyes hardened. "And then there is Cale," she said. The room went quiet. Something in her voice made everyone freeze. "Cale," she continued, her voice rising, "I hope you will finally learn to be a real member of this family." I felt heat rushing to my face. I opened my mouth to respond, but she kept going. "You sit there in your fancy apartment in Seattle, living your comfortable life while your sister needs help buying a home, while your mother struggles to keep this house running." "Mom, what are you talking about?" I managed to say, my voice cracking. That is when she exploded. "Pay the mortgage or disappear." She screamed loud enough that the neighbors probably heard. "You think you can just ignore your responsibilities? Your sister needs $50,000 for a house and you are sitting there pretending you cannot afford it?" 40 people stared at me. Some looked shocked. Others looked away embarrassed. Travis was grinning, actually grinning, enjoying the show. "Your father would be ashamed," my mother spat. "You are the man of this family now, and you act like we do not even exist. You are selfish, Cale. You have always been selfish." I looked at Heather desperately, hoping she would say something. Anything. She nodded in agreement with our mother. Something inside me shattered, but strangely in that same moment, something else clicked into place. I had spent 6 years being invisible, 6 years being used, 6 years waiting for appreciation that would never come. And now I was being publicly humiliated for not giving even more. I took a deep breath and stood up slowly. The room went silent. Even my mother stopped talking, surprised by my movement. "Since we are sharing things with the family," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "I think everyone deserves to know the truth." I looked around the table at the 40 faces watching me. For the past 6 years since my father passed away, I have been paying the mortgage on this house. $2,300 every single month. A few gasps. I paid for Heather's entire college education. $40,000 over 3 years. More murmurs. And I have been sending my mother $500 every month for her personal expenses on top of all that. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. If anyone wants to see the proof, I have 6 years of transaction records right here. Every payment, every transfer documented. Aunt Ruth stood up and walked toward me. I handed her my phone. She scrolled through the records, her face growing paler with each swipe. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Cale, this is over $200,000? "I know," I said. "And tonight I was called selfish for not giving more." I turned to face my mother. She was red in the face, mouth opening and closing like a fish. "That is your responsibility," she stammered. "You are my son. That is what you are supposed to do." "Responsibility," I repeated. To be screamed at in front of 40 people for paying your bills for 6 years. To be called selfish by the sister whose education I funded. To be invisible in a house I kept from foreclosure. The room was deathly quiet. I made a decision in that moment, and I announced it clearly so everyone could hear. "This is the last time I will ever set foot in this house," I said. "Starting tonight I will not send another dollar. Not for the mortgage, not for expenses, not for anything." My mother's face twisted with rage. "You cannot do that. We will lose the house." "Then I suggest you figure something out," I replied. "Maybe Travis can help. After all, he is so successful." I looked at my sister. "And Heather, if you want $50,000 for a house, you should probably start saving, or ask your wonderful boyfriend." I set my napkin on the table, thanked Aunt Ruth for always being kind to me, and walked toward the front door. My mother screamed behind me, "You will regret this, Cale. You are making the biggest mistake of your life. You will come crawling back." I did not turn around. I walked out the front door, down the driveway, and got into my car. I sat there in the darkness for a long moment, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Then I picked up my phone and called my bank. I canceled every automatic transfer I had set up for my family. When the representative confirmed the cancellations, I felt something I had not felt in 6 years. Free. The drive back to Seattle took 3 hours, but I barely noticed the time passing. My mind was racing through everything that had happened, replaying my mother's words, Heather's nodding agreement, the smug look on Travis's face. By the time I got back to my apartment, my phone had exploded with notifications. 15 missed calls from my mother. 23 text messages. The early messages were furious. "How dare you embarrass me in front of everyone? You are an ungrateful son. Your father is rolling in his grave." The later messages shifted to manipulation. "I did not mean what I said. I was just stressed from hosting. Please call me back." The final messages became desperate. "Cale, please, we need to talk about this. You cannot abandon your family." I put my phone on silent and went to bed. Over the next month I stuck to my decision. The 1st of December came and went without me sending the mortgage payment. The 1st of January was the same. In mid-January my mother called from an unknown number, catching me off guard. Her voice was panicked. "Cale, the bank sent a notice. They are saying we are behind on payments. They are threatening foreclosure." "I know," I said calmly. "That is what happens when you do not pay your mortgage." "Please," she begged. "I will apologize. I will do whatever you want." I considered her words carefully. "Did you mean what you said on Thanksgiving?" I asked. "That I am selfish? That Dad would be ashamed of me?" She hesitated. That pause told me everything I needed to know. "I am not coming back," I said. "You need to figure out your own finances. Sell the house, get a job, ask Heather and Travis for help, but do not call me again." I hung up and blocked her number. 2 weeks later, Heather texted me from a different phone. "Mom is having a breakdown. She might have to sell the house. This is all your fault." I typed back a simple response. "For 6 years I gave everything. You called me selfish. Now you can see what selfish actually looks like." Then I blocked her too. But not everyone in my family abandoned me. A few days after Thanksgiving, I received an email from Aunt Ruth. She apologized profusely for not speaking up during dinner. She said she had no idea how much I had been contributing and was horrified by how my mother had treated me. "You did nothing wrong," she wrote. "Linda has always been entitled even when we were children. Your father enabled her behavior for years. You were right to walk away." Her words meant more to me than she could know. Other relatives reached out too. A cousin named Derek sent me a message saying he respected what I did. An uncle I barely knew commented that my mother had always been difficult, and he was glad someone finally stood up to her. I realized that while my immediate family saw me as a bank account, others saw me as a person. The first few months were not easy. Guilt gnawed at me constantly. I would wake up in the middle of the night wondering if I was a terrible son. I would see families on the street and feel a hollow ache in my chest. I decided to see a therapist, a woman named Dr. Patterson, who specialized in family trauma. She helped me understand what I had been experiencing. Terms like enmeshment and emotional manipulation and parentification suddenly made sense. I learned that being a good family member does not mean sacrificing yourself completely. I learned that boundaries are not selfish but necessary. She gave me homework assignments. Write down what you want from life. List the things you gave up over the past 6 years. Identify moments when you felt invisible. That last assignment took me 3 sessions to complete because there were so many moments. As the months passed, I started reinvesting in myself. The $3,000 a month I used to send home now went into a savings account. Within 8 months, I had enough for a down payment on a small condo. I bought my first property at 33 years old. It was modest, just 2 bedrooms in a decent neighborhood, but it was mine. I had earned it by finally choosing myself. I also started hiking on weekends with a group I found online. That is where I met Marcus, a guy about my age who had gone through something remarkably similar. His mother had drained his savings for years before he finally cut her off. We became close friends, bonding over our shared experiences and our journeys toward healing. Through Marcus, I met Jenna. She was smart, kind, and genuinely interested in who I was as a person. Not how much I earned, not what I could provide, just me. Our first date lasted 4 hours. We talked about everything: our childhoods, our dreams, our fears. When I told her about my family situation, she did not judge me or call me cruel. She held my hand and said I was brave. For the first time in years, I felt seen. Exactly 1 year after that Thanksgiving dinner, a letter arrived at my apartment. The handwriting on the envelope was my mother's. I almost threw it away unopened, but something made me pause. Inside was a 2-page letter. My mother had sold the house and moved into a small apartment. Heather and Travis had gotten engaged but were struggling financially. Travis had lost his job at the dealership. The final paragraph was an apology. "I was wrong," she wrote. "I took you for granted. I treated you like you owed me something when you owed me nothing. I am sorry for what I said at Thanksgiving. I am sorry for how I made you feel. I understand if you never want to speak to me again. But I needed you to know that I finally see what I did." I read those words several times. I thought about responding. I thought about forgiving her, reconciling, going back to the way things were. But I knew better now. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I did not reply. Not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. I had finally found peace, and I was not willing to risk it. Forgiveness, I realized, does not require reconciliation. I could release my anger without reopening the door to being used again. Today my life is better than it has ever been. I have a home I own. I have friends who value me. I have a relationship with someone who loves me for who I am, and I have boundaries that protect my peace. My mother and Heather are still out there somewhere living their lives without my financial support. I hear occasional updates from Aunt Ruth. The last I knew, they were getting by but struggling. Some people will say I should have kept helping. That family is family no matter what, that I had a duty as a son, but I believe that family should be built on mutual respect, not obligation. Love should be given freely, not demanded, and no one should be treated as an ATM while being called selfish for not giving more. If you are watching this and you see yourself in my story, please know this. You are allowed to set boundaries. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to walk away from people who hurt you, even if they share your blood. It does not make you a bad person. It makes you someone who finally learned their own worth. And that is a lesson worth more than any amount of money. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below because I know I am not the only one who has been through this. If this story touched you in some way, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you have not already subscribed to this channel so you do not miss future stories. Thank you for listening to my journey. I hope wherever you are, you find the courage to value yourself the way you deserve. Take care of yourselves and remember that choosing your own peace is never selfish.